Good talking to you, John.
Hey, Mike.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the school committee meeting of October 21st, 2020. I would like to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded and is also being broadcast live. Please speak up so everyone can hear you, including me. I have my new hearing aid. Hopefully this is going to work this evening. I managed to get it in without stepping on it. So I would ask you to please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you also please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Small is participating remotely, so all votes will have to be roll call. Mr. Small, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Also, we've got a ton on the agenda tonight, so I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'd like to keep moving as much as we can. We have some people coming in at 8:30. We will be going into executive session as soon as they arrive. So please bear with me as we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I'm going to jump right to the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Bob. So we're into the third week of October, and we really haven't been able to have a conversation or let some of our principals talk about what the wonderful things that are going on since we opened in September. So I've invited the elementary principals, the middle school principals, the high school principal, and our remote school principal to give you a very brief overview of what our kids are doing in school, what school looks like in a COVID world, and present a brief presentation. So elementary folks, you're up.
They're going to be using the board.
Yeah. You remember Karen Downey, principal of Conley, Darlene Foley, principal of Duval, and Gary Pelletier, the interim principal at Indian Head.
Thanks for having us tonight. I'm Karen. We have just some pictures, really, because we feel like if you can see the kids' faces, you'll know what we've been experiencing. And it's easy for us to talk about it, but when you see the kids, the most important part of our opening really has been that the kids are so excited, so happy to be there, as we are as well. So first of all, thank you to everybody, everyone who helped us get there. And with this opening, school facilities, faculty and staff, parents and caregivers, and the leadership team, we are grateful to be together in the buildings and for all the work that happened this summer to make that so. So a few logistical things. Most of you had some tours this summer, so you saw the work that we were doing. Here you can see some of the pictures of things that happened. So of course we have the spacing, 6 feet, masks for everybody, and all of the mitigating actions that we took in order for us to make this happen. Special areas are happening in the classroom or on a cart, and when that happens, so music, art, wellness, in the computer lab, kids are having individual supplies as opposed to shared supplies. We're cleaning the seats and the work areas in between. So there's a lot of the travel time. We're using the time when the kids are moving from one area to the other to make sure that we're cleaning. There are seating charts for every area that the kids are in class, at their special areas, in the lunchroom. And honestly, the kids have done phenomenal with this. We clean the Chromebooks twice a week. I'm sure you know, you've heard Ernie talk about that. Takes place after each of the cohorts leave. The industrial hygienist inspects that and reports back to us, and that's been pretty valuable information and has been really impactful. And mostly, really, minimal handling of materials, hand sanitizers everywhere you look, in classrooms, offices, lunchrooms, the entryways. And really, it's all about safety first. But the best part of the opening is that we have kids in front of us.
I think, thank you for having us tonight. It's very exciting to be back in class or have the kids back in school. A lot has taken place since early spring, and the kids have been doing a fantastic job of keeping socially distanced. We were kind of curious as to how they would do when they first came back, and they have just taken off with it. We have put all kinds of protocols into place. We have scheduled mask breaks. Throughout the building, if you look at these pictures, you'll see that there are markers on the floor. We have paws that have been put outside the building to give visual cues for kids so they know how to keep socially distanced. It's absolutely amazing that they just took to it like ducks to water. They're absolutely amazing. We have assigned seats on the bus so that individually, so that they're safe. If you go to the next slide. In the cafeteria, they have assigned seats for contact tracing if we need to. At lunchtime, they take their masks off. They're 6 feet apart. They seem to enjoy it. In the next slide, we have designated areas on the playground. Indian Head, we have 4 different areas, so each classroom has its own area. They stay together as a cohort. They don't intermingle, but they're out there and they're very happy and they're running around and they're on all kinds of equipment, which is great. They're also at different spots. There are hula hoops where they can go and they can take their masks off for a break. I think one of the most important things that has happened this year is the advances in the curriculum and alignment for elementary ed. Jane Cox, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, has worked very hard along with our lead teachers and our reading specialists in bringing together all 3 schools heading in the same direction. Of course, because of the hybrid model, we're using Google Classroom in all grade levels, K to 5, in all the hybrid, the virtual and the remote. It's integrated with Clever, so there's a single sign-on for kids when they're home working with it. This is our 2nd year in Ready Math. It's a very critical component to what we do because there are computer, like MyPath, which the kids can do at home virtually without having to have a teacher in front of them. Because it's only in mid-October, and we've only had the kids for the last 4 weeks, we're still at the beginning of the year assessments. We only have them 2 days a week, so it's taking us much longer to do that. I think one of the most exciting things this year is we have a new reading program, Into Reading. This is the first year. It's K to 5. We've been doing an awful lot of professional development and collaboration with each other to understand it and implement it. We also have new assessments. One of them is called Amira, which is actually artificial intelligence that does some of the assessments. So it's pretty fascinating to see that happen. And this is also being done by the remote learners as well.
You did great. Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us. So we wanted to add some teacher voice into this presentation, get their thoughts on how they thought the year was going. And the comments show the complexity regarding the social emotional needs of students, the changes in planning and implementation. There's never enough time, but regardless of how hard it's been, they really want to be with students. So I'm going to read the comments going vertically so that the people listening at home can hear it. Kids are bursting with happiness. Teachers are here because they want to be with the kids. Music class has been very different. However, students continue to show up with a positive attitude each week. I wish I had more time with my kids. 2 days is not enough. Students have adjusted so well. New rules, they seem so happy being back in the building. Students missed a lot of school, but I'm seeing individual progress and growth each day. Every teacher dreads Wednesday when the kids aren't here. For every week of school, we're planning for 2 weeks of instruction. Workload has doubled. My job has changed because my first focus is on health and safety. I'm only teaching science, but I miss my classroom, but I love seeing all my former students. There are a lot of extra steps to online meetings. I really miss the face-to-face interactions with families. So I'd say the connections with students and supporting them any way we can is certainly a common theme throughout those comments. The challenges are real for teachers. The biggies include the learning all the new software and programs, the glitches with technology. You know, you think everything works and then the links don't work. That happened in my latest family update. It happens to me too. The Chromebook capacity has been an issue. In time, there's just not enough time to get it all done. We're working really, really hard. So we did the same with the students. They, like the teachers, the kids want to be in school and they want to connect. And here's what they had to say. I miss being close to my friends. Playing has changed, no touching. I can't play with everyone. Social distancing is hard. I want to interact more. Last year, we weren't learning much from home. Now I am. Honesty. I'm surprised that we are learning at school and from home. I miss going to school every day. Learning from home is hard. It's hard to remember where to find things. We don't want to be remote. We want to be in school, so let's make sure we give each other space. I love it. I enjoy seeing my friends. So these comments certainly highlight the struggles for our students. It's real for them too. It's not easy, but the social piece is critical to their development and their happiness. Any questions?
Any questions for the elementary folks at all? I think what you saw in that teacher voice, teachers want to be here and the kids want to be here, but it's really different. And you're going to see it's a little different at every level. And you can see how the elementaries have taken that a little bit, the whole social distancing cues and 6 feet apart, and showing the kindergartners and first graders who've never had to do that, how to do that. So we had to relearn how to be in school the first couple weeks of school and then get into some of the academic components. And I will say it's really cool when I'm out and about with George or whatever, and you get to walk into a classroom and you see the engagement. The tough thing is we don't have all kids, but the really neat thing is when you walk into a class of 8, and the level of instruction and the amount of teacher direction and student learning is pretty cool. And one of the things I've said is to staff, don't get used to that, because we're going to be back to something at some point. We're not going to have 8 to 10 kids in a class, but we do have that, and as small as sometimes 6. So the level of attention to detail with students is pretty spot on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My middle folks, Bill Tranter, and our interim principal at Whitman Middle, Carrie Sandler.
Good evening. Excuse me. Thanks for having us tonight. Pretty much the things that the elementary school principals talked about in terms of protocols, we're kind of following all of the same things district-wide. There are a few differences, like at Hanson Middle, our kids stay in the classroom all day. Teachers rotate, and the kids also stay in the classroom for lunch. We have the advantage of the way the building is set up that we can supervise lunch and keep kids socially distant, because you have a whole lot of different issues when the kids get into the cafeteria, especially middle school kids that don't like to sit still. But we do give them plenty of opportunity to socialize during lunch and what have you. And I think that those types of protocols have worked well when we saw the outbreak with the hockey team in the last couple of weeks, that we didn't have any spread in the middle school. We had a lot of kids, but it was all based on that hockey interaction and not the school interaction. So things that we've put into place so far seem to be very effective in terms of the distancing in the classroom, keeping the kids as separate as possible, rotating the teachers to minimize contact. One of the things that we were able to do at Hanson Middle is we took our cafeteria and turned it into a sensory area for our students who might be having a tough time during class, need a break, need some movement. We have set up a hopscotch, we set up some bouncy balls that they can bounce on. We have paper and crayons and things that they need to color and just kind of clear their head and get out of the classroom. So we have a place for that, and our counseling staff is able to supervise that. A couple of other things that we're doing. We're adding Edgenuity as an online component in our classes so that students get more instruction through the online program with video instructions work that the teachers set up for their students. So it's not just they go in and have a whole bunch of assignments. They actually have some real instruction. The issue that we have right now is we just had PD last Wednesday, and the teachers are starting to play with it and put it together. And they're looking for more time to really work together to make it as effective as possible. And the one thing that I think we all need to remember is that when we get into education and going through college, none of us ever took the class, How to Teach in a Pandemic. So every day, we get a little bit better. We learn something, we figure it out, we make changes, and it gets a little bit better every day. I know everybody thinks that teachers can jump right into it, and I told them at the beginning of the year, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You think you know what teaching was, throw it out the window because it's going to change and it's going to be difficult. Relax, we're all in this together, and we've had a lot of support from the administration, from other principals. Kerry and Mike had worked very closely in our planning, so things were in good order when we opened, and they get better every day.
Good evening. I think I would just echo what everyone else has said in terms of the excitement of having students and teachers back in the building. Every morning I get to stand outside and watch as students enter through the front of the building off the buses and the side of the building from parent drop-off with music going and students dancing their way in and teachers greeting them, and that's a lot of fun, and that's something we really missed in the spring. So that's probably one of the highlights of my day. The other is lunch. At Whitman Middle, we are using the cafeteria. We're also using the band room and the music room, depending on the grade level and depending on the cohort, in order to make sure that students are able to distance and have that 6 feet. But also to watch them having the opportunity to socialize maybe a little bit from their wide span apart, and being able to talk to some students that they may not see in their homerooms during the day. So that's a lot of fun as well. And I think the other thing that I would highlight is on our virtual Wednesdays, our teachers are really working to bring the two cohorts together during that time, because that is the only time that the A and the B students in a particular class are together. They're together virtually, but our teachers are working to make those things a team. And so that's really great to see. Thanks.
Any questions for Bill or Carrie? One of the things, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see you, Don.
Mr. Tranter, can you just go into a little more detail over the Edgenuity? I'm not familiar with it. Is this for hybrid students that are getting this instruction?
It's for both. It's for the hybrid virtual, so on the virtual day, they'll be able to put the assignment up and the students can go into it. And it's all based on the Massachusetts standards. And, you click on it, there's a little video warm-up, an introduction. There's also a button that the kids can hit, and if they have a question on the material, somebody will pop up to answer their question. And then the teachers have picked all of the work to go along with it so that it aligns with what they're doing in class as well. Okay. So they're not just getting the 2 days and then no instruction and just getting a bunch of papers and busy work to do. They're getting continued instruction, but it's all guided by the classroom teacher.
Certain subjects, or what subjects?
It's all 4 course,
Oh, okay,
and it's for all grade levels.
okay.
Just going to add, Bill did actually a pretty good job. He did better than I thought he would explaining that. Good job.
He's surprising us all over.
Yeah, he's having a great day. He was on fire this morning at our meeting. It's good stuff.
Sounded great to me.
So if you remember, Ingenuity came up in the summer. That was one of the things that the state allowed you to do as a platform, a full platform, but then they sort of changed their models. We went with the model where our teachers are the ones who are using it and assigning the work through them. So it is now just a piece that our in-school teachers can use for our hybrid cohort support days, and also our remote teachers at the middle school level have the ability to use it. Those of you who have students who are older, there's also that third piece of Ingenuity, which is credit recovery, and that's still in place at certain times at the high school. But we use it just as an additional way for students to get on grade level, on task, on curriculum level support.
We knew we needed some support in the middles, especially on their hybrid virtual days. The challenge with Ingenuity is when the state rolled this out, I think our presentation was August 4th, They rolled this out August 3rd. We already had a contract with Ingenuity. Greg Moore's our guy, but he said, guys, we can't get your professional development till the end of September. So we were up and running, and we had some parents, asking what we were going to do, and it was just a matter of time. And it's a slow rollout, but I think our teachers have it. I think it's a good tool. There's also a tutorial there. And at the high school, we've had Ingenuity for about 7 years right now. It's credit recovery, or for students who wanted to take an additional course or something couldn't fit in their schedule. So it's a good program. The other piece I just wanted to mention about Bill and Carrie, middle school kids are usually fidgety and usually have a lot of kids in your office once in a while for discipline. What's discipline been like at the middle level? Zero. I think kids want to be here. We don't have detentions. They haven't been fidgety. I mean, I think kids really want to be here, and I give credit to the teachers who keep them engaged when they're here. So they don't want to get in trouble. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Jones, we got about 5 minutes. I know you're usually about an hour long, so if you could cut it.
I get a bad rep. Middle school yield the rest of their time to me.
No, you got time, Chris.
You told me to keep it short, so I'll keep it to the 17 points that I had to make. But seriously, a huge shout out to being back, and who's making this happen is the teachers, the staff, the students, and administration for helping support us in getting that done. I mean, you have teachers working like you wouldn't believe, with a totally new way of teaching, and students that are buying into it and really participating and getting engaged. So what we figured we'd do when we opened is we had to keep it simple and keep it flexible. So we had 4 principles to reopening. We wanted to be flexible so we could move around just in case we do have to do anything remote or anything like that. We want to maximize in-person learning with teachers. We want to increase our focus on SEL and building relationships, and we want to have constant communication. So keeping those in mind, what you're looking at now is the school changed their schedule, the high school changed its schedule to 6 shorter periods. They're stagnant periods. They don't rotate. They used to rotate. But to keep it simple so students could log in, they're in the 6-period schedule. They meet every day at the same time, so that if we do have to go remote, then we're just going to adjust that and keep that schedule so it's nice and simple. What we've heard from some students as far as feedback is that it's easier to keep track of. It's easier to schedule around, and the classes are shorter. They're not too long. Because what our teachers are doing to make sure that we maximize in-person teaching and learning is that they're streaming their class live from their classroom. So a teacher is in front of their classroom, they've got up to 15 students in front of them, and they've got up to 15 students that are at home on the off cohort streamed into the computer. So they're going back and forth, getting participation from the computer. Some are facilitating class discussions that way. They're having them do different things at the same time and so forth, so they can move through the curriculum, but keep all the kids on the same page. And what teachers are now doing is they're pairing students in the classrooms, now that we've got Chromebooks out to every kid in the class. They're pairing the kids at home with a partner in the classroom and so forth in different groupings like that. So they're trying to keep that class together as one, even though they're a separate cohort. So that's really working well. The logistical and safety piece, all our floors are one way, with the exception of the main floor. We have one-way stairwells. Our lunchrooms have been split into 2. We're utilizing the lunchroom that we typically use, the student dining, and we're utilizing the back of the gym, the back quarter of the gym. So we have students in there and students in there. That's not too cool. That's the biggest complaint we've heard, because it's assigned seating and it's assigned location based on class. So students don't particularly care for the idea of being in a pre-selected lunchroom, pre-selected seat, but we're doing that for contact tracing purposes. One of the neat things we've seen about that, because we're trying all kinds of different things to keep them engaged during lunch, one of the neat things we've seen is they're starting to talk to people that they wouldn't normally have talked to before. So they're branching out a little bit. We were concerned about that, being nervous and so forth. We did speak to all the classes and ask them to look, you don't have to necessarily like somebody or hang out with them, but be friendly. You don't have to be friends, but be friendly. Consider the student sitting in a lunchroom that doesn't really want to talk to people around them. And we've noticed a lot of students talking to each other and things like that. So that's a good part of that. Attendance, we've noticed, so there have been some questions about attendance. One of the things that streaming has allowed us to do is that if a student gets up in the morning and has what people determine as COVID symptoms, instead of taking a chance or anything like that, if they don't feel well, they stay home, they log into their classroom, because it's just as if they were sitting in the classroom, not as good as in person with the teacher, but they're able to log in, attend the class, and get credit for being there. They're marked physically absent for emergency purposes and things like that, but we adjust the attendance and they're marked present remotely so that they're still in there. It doesn't hurt them for attendance-wise. We also noticed that for students that have to be quarantined for any kind of close contact, if there's an extended absence, they can still get into the class. And that's directly because of the work the teachers are doing to keep them all together and stream at the same time. The one or the two big things that seem to be an issue have to do with culture. If you've ever been to this high school before COVID, it is now a completely different world. There's a lot less students. There's not as much, well, what we like to see is noise in the hallway with the students doing different things. Students are missing out on a lot of events. And so we're trying to think up creative ways to keep kids interested, involved, because a huge part of high school, yes, we like to talk about academics, a huge part is socialization and what students are doing, relationships, memories, things like that. So we're struggling against that. And then also the other issue is teacher workload. Our teachers are, not to bang a drum, but our teachers are working incredibly hard. And they're clearly working harder than they've ever had to work. They're doing it, but it's an incredible amount of hours. And so my concern as the building leader is we're going to see burnout quicker than we typically see in teachers. So we're just working to do what we can to support them in any way we possibly can. Wednesdays help with that because they get some time to do some planning and so forth. But that's it in a nutshell.
Questions?
Any questions for Chris? Nice job, Dr. Jones. Nice and brief.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you very much.
Trish, you're back there. You want to briefly just talk about preschool, our little guys, and little girls? I know you don't have anything prepared, but I know you're here and I don't want to waste your time.
I'm Trisha Collins. I'm the principal of the Preschool Academy. For us, Desi asked us to come back in person for obvious reasons. It has been the most amazing, it's been just amazing to see the kids back in the building. I had one little girl that came up to me and said, you know, this is the best day ever when they first came back. And listening to the kids just laugh and be happy in the classrooms has been amazing. We do have some parents that have chosen remote. It's really very tricky, and we have a brand new teacher that has taken that on, and she's done an amazing job. I've done several walkthroughs to watch her behind the scenes and to watch her in front of the kids, and she just has that little laptop and she's going around the whole room and she's just working with the kids. They're painting at home. They're really having an experience of preschool with their parents, and that's been amazing. The teachers are working really hard to keep the children socially distanced and to teach children how to stay safe. They use the big part of the first 10 days to really develop a curriculum about how they were going to teach kids that, and they did that. The kids just go with the flow. They're really resilient, and they wash their hands and wash their hands and wash their hands, and they're perfect at washing their hands right now. So it's been a really great experience to see the preschool team working together so diligently to really come together and make this work for the kids. So it's been a really successful experience for us. We're pretty much self-contained. Probably one of the biggest challenges is that parents can't come into our space. So the high school has been great. Chris has been great about working with us to help us find spaces to be able to do testing so that we can bring one parent in when they have to do testing when they're 2 years, 10 months, and you have to do testing from early intervention. We really can't ask them to come in without their parents. So the high school has been great about working with us as a team, as they always are, to be able to make sure that works. So we've every aspect, we've really worked on it. So it's been great. We do miss not having the high school students working with us, though. That's last year it's been sad. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Trish?
No. Fred, can you hear everyone?
Fred?
Yep,
You're
I
good?
can.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
thanks.
just checking.
Thanks, Trish.
Yep.
Mike, why don't you talk about what it's like to be the remote principal and what are we doing over there? How many kids we have? What's it look like?
Good evening. So it's very interesting. I was part of this whole thing all summer and doing the hybrid and the cohorts, and I really didn't know much about remote learning, and it's been an interesting ride so far.
I've never seen, I'm going to reiterate what a lot of other people have already said, I've never seen people work harder in my career here, so, and I'm in 29 years, so, and that's top to bottom. That's Jeff, George, all the way down, teachers, aides, everybody's working very hard. We have 316 students, K to 8, in our remote program. We have 9 K to 5 remote teachers at this point in time. We have 5 paraprofessionals. At the middle school level, we have 6 teachers and 3 paraprofessionals. At the elementary level, again, I have to give kudos to Jane Cox, who does a lot of the curriculum there, especially with iRead and iReady, and setting up a mirror so we could do assessments for kids and get them in the right place. And those assessments continue to go on because, we were delayed getting in, but they're finishing them up in the next couple of weeks. Nick Merritt, who's been wonderful with our McGraw-Hill and our Houghton Mifflin social studies pilots. He's got those out to people, and they had a training last week. I believe they have another one coming up. He's been fantastic getting that set up. Technology has been excellent. I've worked with them several times. If somebody's Chromebooks goes down, we get another one as soon as possible. If an app isn't working, they're right on it. So if I get a phone call, I talk to them, we work it out, it gets right out. The kids and the parents of our remote students have been fantastic. They've been very patient. We've had a couple of power outages that haven't really helped us, but our teachers will post the assignments, the kids will get them, or the kids will say, I wasn't able to get in, and we take care of it. So it's been very interesting. Bill talked about Edgenuity for the middle school students. We have the same opportunities that his students and Kerry's students have. Gary talked about Clever and some of the apps that we have, and we have those same opportunities with our elementary kids, and for the most part, I have to say it's fantastic. Our technology seems to be working, and kids are I get very few phone calls from teachers saying the kids aren't showing up on time or leaving early or shutting their camera off, and usually a phone call home if that happens, and we're all set. But I'm impressed with how this all came together. It's been, we worked hard to get it to happen, and it's happening. So that's about it.
Any questions for Mike? New world that we're living in right now. Last year at this point, we never would have thought we'd have 300, what'd you say, 16?
316
K to 8 kids, and we have another 100 plus from the high school that are remote. Chris is overseeing those students, but Mike's looking specifically at the K to 5 or K to 8 student population. We have quite a few teachers doing that. Like I mentioned before, some of those teachers medically can't be in our building, so they're teaching remotely, and we've actually had to go out and hire new staff to teach remote. Some of that came from the budget that we had approved in the summer. Those are those 4 new staff members that are teaching remotely because of the class, the amount of students that are in those grade levels remote. And we've had to add a few because our first grade numbers are over 40, and one teacher can't successfully engage 40 students during the elementary day. So Mike's doing a great job. We're going to continue to update this committee, especially with the remote piece of it. We tried to put this together based upon parent feedback, wanting connections to our regional school district, and not having a company teach remote. As I presented in August, we had options for that. Parent feedback said, look, we want our kids here, so we were able to scramble, put some things together, and now Mike has that lead. Any questions for Mike? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And then Lauren Matheson, I just want Lauren to give you a brief overview of SPED. Lauren leads us pre-K to 12 plus to our 22-year-olds in special education, and this is a whole new world for special education students as well.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I actually want to start out with a thank you to this group and to Jeff and George. Last year, in the springtime, I brought to you a request to join the South Shore Educational Collaborative as a district, and you approved that request, and the collaborative approved our membership, which became effective this summer. And With our membership in the collaborative came a significant tuition savings for our students that attend there. And with the savings that we saw from joining, we were able to start a new TLC program, which stands for Therapeutic Learning Center, for our elementary students in Hanson. We have a program in Whitman, but in looking at our continuum of services, our Hanson students did not have that access. So they either needed to go across town or sometimes even out of district. So keeping our students in their home school provides them opportunities for inclusion with their peers, the peers that they're in neighborhoods with. They don't have to get on a van and go across town. They're able to be included with their own peers. It keeps kids in their own towns, as well as helps to keep kids in district. So that was a huge bonus, and you had a part in it, so thank you for that, for approving that, and I'm excited for that program. Next, I want to talk to you a little bit about what learning looks like for students with special needs and our English learners. As you've heard tonight, everyone is working really hard. That goes the same for our special educators, our paraprofessionals, and our related service providers. They're working really hard right now. Before school started, we had 10 days before the students came back, and every one of our liaisons and team members contacted every single student on an IEP plan and had personal conversations with each family and came up with a student support plan that helped the parent understand how the IEP would be delivered regardless of which model they were choosing. So regardless of if the student was remote, if they were in a hybrid model, or they were full-time in person, services look different. The what and the how looks different, and the when. So these conversations happened. IEP services are still being provided. We're learning new things. Teletherapy is happening for remote students. We have virtual social skills groups. We have breakout Google Meets where we can provide individualized instruction, math support, reading support, writing support. We just did an elementary and middle school training on a new Orton-Gillingham-based reading program that now we've learned how to do online. So even our direct phonics instruction for students who need some remediation is being done virtually. And our staff has really been working hard to learn all of these new programs, to learn how to provide these services to students in many different locations. All of our substantially separate programs in the district, and we do have programs at every school now, we have prioritized full-time in-person learning for these students. DESE has asked us to do that, and I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to do that, and I can tell you that in working with our out-of-district coordinator, some private schools haven't even been able to do that. So the fact that our students with the most significant needs, who we can do this safely for because we already have classroom spaces with small cohorts, with teachers who are working with these students based on their level of need, we're able to bring them in safely and do that every day. We're also bringing in our English learners who are level 1 and 2, so they are really early on in learning the English language. They're benefiting from coming in on both of the cohort days. They are getting double lessons in English and math, but for someone who is learning the language on top of learning content, that is super helpful for them. So they're getting the repetition they need, and we're able to prioritize them, so that's been great. Finally, I want to end with a congratulations. Our officers and members of the Whitman-Hanson Best Buddies program that we have here at the high school has just been honored from Best Buddies International with the Inclusion in Leadership Award. The award recognizes their true understanding of inclusion and friendship for demonstrating the meaning of inclusion within the chapter leadership team and promoting this mission throughout the school and the community. Our student group is led by Kathy Buzan and Jen Buteau, who are phenomenal teachers, if you don't know them, and a huge shout out to all of our student officers. We have amazing student officers. We have such an amazing Best Buddies program, and it really affects the climate of the school, and we really do have a great inclusive community here. Mike Armiger, who is a recognized leader in special education and mental health, had this to say about inclusion. Inclusive education is essential because through extending our imaginations into another person's world whose experiences we may not share, we learn to empathize and we learn to connect. And those skills are worth teaching our young people. And I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't be more proud of our inclusion community that we have here at Whitman-Hanson. Any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. You guys are good. If you want to go out, building leaders, you can go. I know you have things to do and you have a tough day tomorrow. So thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for speaking about what we're doing. Skylar, are you still here?
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, she is.
We have our student representative, Skylar Leonard, from Student Council. So Skylar's going to be with us at our school committee meetings, and she has a report to give you.
Okay, so how the year has been so far, through talking to my students and peers every day, we've all agreed that the beginning of the school year was a little rough trying to navigate online learning, but now feel that being and getting back into the gist of everything, that school has been a lot more easier, and it was just being out of school for so long and then getting on a new schedule was hard to navigate from just doing whatever for 6 months. And then how online learning has been, it's students obviously like being in person a lot better than online, but the workload has been manageable. But on Google Classroom it shows all of the numbers, and everyone agrees that when you log in on Monday and see this week's assignments and you see there's 18 assignments due this week, it's overwhelming and stressful just to know this is gonna have to all get done this week, even though we know there's no other way around it because you only have those 2 days. And everyone has also said that they like being in school a lot more just because they feel more engaged, and at home people agree that they're not as motivated because they don't have someone really right in front of them watching what they're doing, or to tell them to kind of oh, you got this, that's whole situation. And for right now, the sports, people all are wearing their mask because they know the cost. They don't want our season to get canceled, and all of the teams have been really good about wearing their mask and socially distancing after school. And it is a good outlet for all the students so far because no one has seen each other in so long, and it's great to just be in school and have after school activities because even the clubs have all been online. So doing a sport right now is very beneficial, more than ever, I would say. And the communication so far this year, I think a lot of students were unsure what the school year was going to look like coming back to school, that everyone felt stressed, but since everyone was on the same boat, that it was very manageable to get used to everything. And the changes, no one knew how it was gonna affect us, lunch or the hallways. We all knew what we were walking into but didn't know what it would really be like. And then what's going on in the school right now, we're doing trivia during lunches Tuesday and Fridays, and students can win cookies made by Culinary. And Student Council has a guessing the candy in the number jar and the candy in the jar at lunch, which is something for students just to look forward to. We've just been trying to find fun activities that are new. Everything we've been doing hasn't been done before for Student Council. We have to come up with all new ideas, and we're doing guess the staff member based off of their baby picture, and there's baby pictures hung up in the hallway of the staff members, and there will be prizes giving out to the top 3 students and staff. And Student Council is also planning to do a drive-in movie once the first frost happened because of the triple E ban. And we were planning on doing it at the end of October, but now we have to just wait for the first frost. And we were planning on doing it for free just to have, just to make sure that everyone can go who wants to go. Also, there's a new pre-med club who was created by one of the seniors, Savannah Murphy, and other clubs in the school have been meeting, such as a cappella, marine biology, SAD, and Key Club. And that's it.
Good job.
Very good.
Any questions for Skylar?
Are you set?
Mr. Scrivens got
Was it
one.
what? I thought I heard you say pre-med.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Wow. All right. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar.
Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks. Well done. Mr. Tuffy, want to give a little bit of a budget overview, please? And I'd like to introduce Miss Otina. She's from Whitman. She is on the Whitman FinCom, and she's going to be our FinCom liaison to school committee. Mr. LaMontina is the Selectmen Liaison. I spoke to Randy on Monday at our building committee meeting. So welcome.
Good evening. Sitting there is a unique view. I get to watch the people as they present. And as I looked at the elementary school teachers, they had this great big presentation up on the board that they could read. And our student representative is reading that off a telephone. I have no idea how that works. For tonight's meeting, I sent you 2 pieces of information based on the budget. The thicker one has to do with expenses. And to just talk about expenses very quickly, at this point in time, things are looking pretty reasonable, pretty well. So far this year, we've spent about 30.4% of the budget. That's compared to last year when we had spent 36.6%. Now, I realize that years are not exactly the same, but at some level, an awful lot of what we do is a fixed cost and will be the same every year. Salaries for teachers, the cost of property and casualty insurance, health insurance, those are almost fixed costs and pretty much the same every year. We're running the same kind of buses that we did last year, so that's sort of a fixed cost as well. And utilities are relatively the same, whether we have 600 kids or 1,200 kids in this building, the cost of heat and light is much the same. So it's not a perfect metric, but it does give us some information, and so far it's not looking too bad. I will tell you that 30% number is a little bit inaccurate in the sense that normally we would show, when we talk about what we've spent, it's what we have actually sent out the door in a check to pay a bill, but what we've encumbered. So for instance, when we do transportation, we usually encumber a year's worth of transportation, and that's money that's no longer available for things other than that purchase order for transportation. Because we started the year off with 1/12 budgets and we were so late in being able to come up with our actual budget that was approved, we didn't encumber as many things as we normally would have. So for instance, we made the decision in early September as we really started into this year that we didn't have the time and the manpower to go back and do all of the encumbrances. We would pick them up as we went along. So for instance, transportation was just encumbered this month because we just got a bill for September. So it's off a little by about 3%, but nonetheless, we're still lower than we were last year or more or less in the same range. The other part of the budget that we have to deal with is revenue. And revenue, and I got to tell you, I'm amazed. This year we've collected 25.4% of projected revenue. Last year we had collected, this year it's 25.5, and last year we collected 25.4. I don't know. I don't know why it worked out like that, but it did. When we talk about revenue, there are a couple of things that we're going to have to take into account. Now that we're fully back and we've gone through some people who have left and new hires that have come in, we're going to have to go back and reconcile our salary accounts, our substitute teacher accounts, and our SPED accounts, and see if there's any major changes between what we projected and what the actual budget is. And so that's information that we'll be working on. We also know that we have a couple of other accounts that we're going to have to adjust. One is unemployment. Based on the unemployment costs we had this summer, that's an account that we can guarantee is going to have a deficit, so we'll recognize that early on. And I mentioned utilities. We know that heating will cost more this year because of changes in what we have to have for air exchanges. So as the winter goes on, we will be dumping a lot more hot air outside and bringing a lot more cold air inside to heat up. So how that will affect that bill, gosh, I don't know. We'll work with Ernie to get some information, but I think it's going to be, to a large extent, experience that will tell us what that's going to be. So those are some things we're going to have to deal with. And then finally, on the revenue side, I mentioned, and something I've talked about before, we still don't have a final state budget. So we don't really know exactly what that number is going to be. We've seen the moral equivalent of a local aid resolution. The state has made a commitment to what they say the minimum for Chapter 70 will be, and that we know is going to be a reduction of about $110,000 over budget, so something we'll deal with. And how are we going to deal with it? We're expecting that the grants that we've been given, the grants or the COVID aid, or however we want to describe it, will help fill some of that gap. Not in terms of replacing revenue, but in terms of covering some costs that were not budgeted and unexpected. And finally, we don't know what the regional transportation number is yet, but that will come out as well. The latest talk that we're hearing is that it really will be close to Thanksgiving before there's a budget that's been sent by the House and Senate to the governor. It's going to be the beginning of December before we actually get a budget signed. It's not the first time that's happened, and if things continue to go the way they are now, we'll work our way through it. Are there any questions? I'll be glad to answer in any level of detail that I can.
Mr. Howard?
Yeah, so just generally speaking, so we have the budget, the expended, the encumbrances, and then the available.
Yes.
And so I know, like you said, some of that's timing between what we've expended, what we've encumbered, what's left. Are there any lines on the expense side that are causing you concern when you look at both either a combination of what's been encumbered or expensed, or okay so far? Like I was looking at tuition to other schools, the contract services for cleaning, some of this, but I can't tell if that's just timing or, hey, wait a second, there's some concerns based upon what we've expensed.
So tuition to other schools, and we're really talking about SPED for the most part, and that's something that we have to go back and reconcile. We've had some surprises, some out-of-district placements that we hadn't been planning on, some out-of-district placements that we had been planning on. So we've got to reconcile that account. At this point, there's nothing that I look at and go, oh my gosh, it's going to be a mess. But there are certainly some line items that I know we're going to have to adjust. Just not exactly sure what that is. I think as we get into November and December, it's going to start to shake out, and we'll know where our problem children are. Biggest question continues to be when it comes to federal aid. A stimulus program, a program that right now runs out at the end of December. For a long time, there's been talk about a second stimulus program, and I think that most public schools and public agencies were really expecting to see that happen. That hasn't happened, and I guess that's a concern. It's more the revenue side than the expense side. I mean, we've been tasked with some expenses that we never anticipated. You look around and the masks we're wearing, the cleaning we're going through, you mentioned the cleaning. Well, cleaning at this point in time, the extra cleaning that we're doing, we're submitting to Plymouth County for reimbursement because it was unbudgeted, unexpected, completely related to COVID. We believe that that's going to be covered through the end of December. Not sure what happens when January comes along. I mean, so those are the concerns, that prospective,
Great.
But not real at this point.
Thank you.
Dawn?
In regards to regional transportation,
Yes.
if I'm reading our budget correctly on page 9, is our budget for transportation costs 1.1 million? And my question would be, if we hear, or let me back up. So I believe last year our reimbursement for regional transportation was maybe around 70% or so. So if we hear with the governor's budget, like that they've decided to slash that to 50%, I'm wondering what our exposure is, what our risk is of losing roughly dollar-wise if we hear that, governor's budget is going to cut that.
Well, the expected number for transportation reimbursement was $800 and some odd thousand.
Okay.
It was a very large number.
Okay.
So if it gets to be a very small number, that's going to be a problem.
Okay.
I don't mean to be flip about it, I don't know the way to put it. Don't know what the reality is going to be. The hope is that we're going to see a budget that level funds some of those line items, just as they have level funded Chapter 70, or talked about leveling Chapter 7, funding Chapter 70. It hasn't passed yet, or even local aid, unrestricted local government aid. The talk is that they will level fund circuit breaker. So if it becomes a level funded number, we can live with it.
Right.
But-
Thank you.
And by the way, our transportation number is roughly that number, yeah, that you see in the budget. That is exclusive of sped transportation, by the way.
Correct.
That's a separate line item.
Correct.
Any other
Anyone
questions?
else?
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here, Mrs. Otina. Welcome. Look forward to seeing you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a COVID-19 update and where we're going. Currently, right now, we have 31 students and staff in quarantine by either our boards of health or that's where the teacher lives, their board of health has quarantined them. We've had 12 positive student cases in district so far and 1 positive staff case. As of this week, we have 35 students coming out of quarantine, and they all, or a large majority of those students, were in a hockey cluster. We've had 0 transmission within the district. Our kids, as you heard from the principals here, are abiding by the rules that we've set forward with Board of Health, with Mass DPH. They're doing the right things. I think teachers are doing the right things, kids are doing the right things. You heard they want to be here. We've had 0 transmissions within the school district itself. The concern I have is the state map and the red, yellow, green, gray. As we know, Hanson went in the red last week. Whitman was in yellow last week. We're all assuming on the Whitman side, based on numbers that we saw on Columbus Day weekend, Whitman will probably be in the red. So what does that mean? I sent out a letter to parents and staff last week saying that just because we're in the red doesn't mean we're leaving school. In August, the commissioner, the governor said, look at this map, look at this metric to say, hey, if you're in the red for 3 consistent weeks, look at the data, and you're probably going to move to remote. George and I were on a conference call with the commissioner last week, and he's kind of changing his tune a little bit to say, if you're in the red, but it's not affecting your district, you have to look at an internal metric with your Board of Health to see where those clusters are. So I'm telling the community, I'm telling the school committee, right now, we have 1 week in the red in Hanson, and we are a district. So if Hanson stays in the red, it's almost like Whitman is in the red. We're not going to say to the Whitman kids, come to school, and the Hanson kids stay home. So we're doing one decision for the regional school district. I was on a conference call with the Whitman Board of Health the other day with Lisa Tobin, and I have to give a shout out especially to Lisa, because she's almost working 24/7, 7 days a week. Parents call her on Saturday. My son tested positive today, just letting you know, and the contact tracing with both boards of health springs into action. On Columbus Day weekend, you all received my correspondence at 6 o'clock at night. Lisa was working all Columbus Day, getting information out, and she's only using information that can be verified. She's not taking a parent, I heard that so-and-so was, it's not a Facebook post that this kid has it. She's confirming with the parents. So if we end up in red, and Lisa just texted me, we have a Board of Health call on the 23rd. I'm going to be looking to the Board of Health to make recommendations whether or not we stay in school or they feel it's unsafe for our students to report to school. It's not going to be a lone decision on my part. If they close us, it's their decision, but I don't think they're going to do something without input from the regional school district. Lisa's been working with them, telling them where our students are. They know right away, and we haven't had that cluster within these schools. It's been outside, it's been youth sports, it's been a few other little things. I don't know what it's going to look like in other communities. Being very upfront, I'm concerned that if other school districts go remote, Marshfield, Norwell, Hanover, Pembroke, whatever, and I have teachers that live in those communities that have kids, they're not going to have any place for their kids to go 2 days a week. That might impact us. They might have to take time. They might have to use their federal time for childcare, whatever, and that might affect us. I don't know. I've been on calls with our superintendents locally so that we can almost make a unified decision of where we're at. And right now, the predominant feeling is it's not affecting our schools. Our schools are cleaner and safer than they've ever been. Keep our kids here. That was the conversation I had with Chief Greno the other day. I want to keep our kids here. It's beneficial for them socio-emotionally, academically, all of the above. It keeps our parents sane so that they have their routine right now, and that's where I stand. The Board of Health will make that decision if they need to, but based on the information that we have right now, we're going to move forward with our hybrid learning plan that we have. We do have a remote plan in place if we have to pivot. The thought process is if we do pivot, it's not going to be for a week, it'll be for 2 to 3 weeks. So parents can adjust their schedule. I'm not going to call off school on Thursday and say remote because of COVID and then expect kids to come back on Monday. It's going to be a time frame. And that's a discussion or a decision we'll make, and I'll give the committee that, and we'll voice it, and we'll communicate that with families. It won't be a spur of the moment. We'll lead that up to the conversations we've had with Board of Health. But we do have a remote plan in place in case we have to move to remote. Or one of the superintendents texted me today, said, what if the state is mostly in red and the governor moves us out? Or the commissioner moves us out? So those are all factors that we're going to take into consideration. The one thing I'm waiting from DESE and there's no metrics out there right now, is if we do go remote, say we're in red and the Board of Health says after the 28th of October, we've been in red for 3 weeks and it doesn't look like we're coming out and our percentages are raising, and we go out, and I would say November 2nd through Thanksgiving. That would give us 3 weeks out plus the Thanksgiving holiday. We return the Monday after. What if both communities are still in red? There's no metrics for us to return necessarily unless we work it out internally with our own boards of health. So before we make those decisions on going out, I want to work on a metrics with the boards to bring us back. What I don't want to do is make a call to go out and we're still staying red through Thanksgiving and the holiday season, the winter holiday season, and we have no plan on returning back to at least our hybrid model. So that's where we're at with COVID. Lisa's done a tremendous job. The building principals, I got to give praise to both boards of health. They are working their tails off with us. Enough that, the contact tracing, they'll call us and say, Johnny was coming to school, he rode the bus. We call the bus company, they have a seating chart on the bus, it goes over to them, they then make the phone calls. We don't make those contact tracing phone calls. We want to keep things private because of HIPAA. What we also don't do is if a parent comes, like I said before, we don't have a parent call in and just say, my student or XYZ student. We confirm that with the parent of the child or the family member who might be testing positive. It's difficult. The quarantine piece is challenging for our students who are out for 14 days. It's challenging for our staff who have to quarantine even because of their family member who might have the illness, who might test negative, but the family member still has to, even if they test negative, if the family member is positive and even the family member that I would test negative as a spouse, I still have to quarantine for a time period. So it doesn't necessarily make sense sometimes, but we are following the guidelines of our local boards of health and Mass DPH. We haven't gone above those guidelines. We've stayed within line of those guidelines. So this has been, when the principals say this has been challenging, this has been a real challenge for us administratively to try to make decisions. As Bill Tranter said, we didn't go to school for this. I didn't go to school to call off school because of COVID and who's positive and who's negative and my staffing levels and who's going to cover if we go out. Some of my colleagues have had to call off school because they have too many teachers out being quarantined. And we're trying to err on the side of safety. So I'm telling this committee, I'm telling the communities, just because we're in red doesn't mean we're necessarily going to go out. We have to look at the data. We want to make sure our kids are safe. and we're going to follow the direction and the advice and the recommendations of both boards of health with COVID. But we do have a plan in place if we pivot. That being said, too, outside of COVID, if you've seen the commissioner put something out the other day, I can now call a remote day a snow day. So if we have inclement weather and it looks like it's going to be a bad morning, I can tell the staff and students the night before, we're going to have a remote day. Now, that's great, except in both these communities, we're losing power every day, so that doesn't really help us. But it's an option for us to move and set the end of the year date in June for inclement weather. We can have a remote day. Now, I told that to some members of the Superintendent's Council today who are seniors, and I could have gotten booed out of the cafeteria because they've lost their snow days, and seniors always look forward to their snow days. But we will not be using, unless it's really a blizzard and we look like we're going to lose power, most inclement weather days or snow days will be our remote days, so we won't have to make that up. That's a one-year reprieve that the commissioner gave superintendents this year. Anyone have any questions about COVID or our response?
Yeah, just have a question on like, when these cases are reported to the Board of Health, like in Hanson, they have the assisted living. Do they consider that part of the number if they're looking to close school? Because those people aren't going anywhere.
So that's a very interesting point. They have been part of the red, but the commissioner has now said to us, as of our conference call last week, that they're pulling those assisted living pieces out, the prisons out, the colleges out, the nursing homes, the soldiers' homes, so that in your numbers, you have to look at that outside. Hanson hasn't told me if they've had any cases at the assisted living place yet, so I don't know if those numbers are actually the Hanson cause. Looking at the families affected by the hockey piece, probably not there. It was that cluster. And Chris Howard and I were talking a little bit before, it spread quickly. A coach, another coach, a couple of kids, and all of a sudden it really blossomed because they were in the locker rooms, not necessarily, I don't know, I've heard that maybe social distancing was happening in some rinks and not other rinks. Another thing with our youth sports, our AAUs, our youth groups, our other club teams are traveling outside the state and playing in other states. So two teams, a team from Hingham, a team from Hanson, might go to New Hampshire to play because it's okay, and then they come back home. So that's been happening, and now I know there's some things going on in New Hampshire, closing the borders down a little bit because of that. But it really has hit the South Shore specifically around youth hockey and the certain rinks that are there. Enough that DPH and DESE got involved to kind of contact trace to make sure that we were okay. So, yeah, that was something that was brought up.
Only because like I heard about the prisons, like, you get Bridgewater and Plymouth. Didn't want those
So
hit
that was
counts.
addressed, and that's something that's not supposed to be part of our metric. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of offer up some feedback I'm hearing and a question. When you have identified, someone positive, we've all heard and agree with the notion that it's so important for kids to be in school, but I think parents want to make an informed decision. So, the dissemination of accurate information, I think is critical. I know there are some specifics can't be shared, but in terms of even just which school, which cohort, that then a parent can say, they might have someone at home that's compromised or something, and yes, I want to send my kid to school, but geez, maybe we should reconsider or whatever.
I can say school, I can't say cohort. I can't go that far. If a parent has a specific question, they have to call the Board of Health. But according to guidelines and DPH and HIPAA and FERPA.
Is there something specific that you could refer me to that I could refer them to?
Sure, I'll get that.
Other than just
yes.
DESE guidelines or something, you know what I mean?
Yep, but I can say, at one point, I thought I couldn't say school. I could just say community member. We dug down deeper, and I'm allowed to say what building it's at.
Okay.
But I can't get into cohort specific. I can't get into if they're 2 days a week, if they're a full-time student. That goes into their HIPAA. So I will try to get that out there. I'll put that out on the website as well.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a good question.
So just to follow up on that, Jeff, if through the contact tracing efforts that the district employs, if there is an identification that someone has been in close contact, the parent is going to get a notification.
Absolutely.
Right? So certainly, I agree.
Didn't hear you, Chris, sorry.
So if there is, so you're talking about more of a general statement, which, to the extent we can do that, great. It sounds like we can't for compliance. But the other thing I think parents need to be aware of is if I'm sitting next to Mike and we're in cohort A and we're sitting in a room together and I test positive, Mike's parents are going to get a note saying, hey, the person you were sitting next to, I don't know how you're doing
Yes,
it, but
that's so what Lisa does, Board of Health, a parent calls us. My son just tested positive. Lisa then calls Board of Health right away. Board of Health says, where is that student? Where are they located? What building? And give me who could be in 6 feet. Lisa has already called the building principal and found out if they ride the bus or not. So every part of the school is traced and kicked back to the Board of Health. They make the decision to say, this student might have been in close contact in the hallway, whatever. But again, going back to what you saw from the elementary principals and the practices that are in play, for a close contact to be real, it's within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. So if I'm walking down the hall, and even if Mike and I fist bump and I'm COVID positive and I don't see him, I didn't spend more than 15 minutes with Mike, even if we were close contact. So we're looking at seating in a classroom. That's why it was very important for us when we presented in August to say, we want to stay at 6 feet. WHO recommendations were 3 feet, maybe a little 4, but we're at 6 feet, if not a little bit further in some spots. That has allowed us to really contact trace, and it's really minimal, the contact that have been involved in schools. But I understand that, but both, either the Whitman Board of Health or the Hanson Board of Health will call parents whose sons or daughters might have been exposed due to close contact in the school. Outside of the school has been more difficult for the boards to get that contact tracing because some coaches haven't volunteered their rosters or where those kids have been. So that's been problematic, and I think that's where DPH got involved. But I'll get that information out, and yes, if a parent of a student who might have been involved or close to someone, they get a call from our boards of health that day as soon as possible, and it's worked out very well.
Chair Hayes. So just to follow up, if Chair Hayes and I are in a classroom for more than 15 minutes, but our desks are 6 feet apart, if I test positive, Chair Hayes is not a close contact and will not have to quarantine?
He's not going to be determined a close contact, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that means that Chair Hayes won't be notified.
He won't be
He
notified.
won't be notified.
So we give the schematic to the Board of Health, and they look, and then they make that phone call. So that's correct.
Yeah, can I? Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go.
I mean, this is my life right now, right? So I'm in a room with kids all day, and I think what we're being told, educators, and I think the hardest thing for parents to understand is we think that if my child is sitting next to a child who tests positive, I'm going to find out. But we're not, because everyone's 6 feet apart. And CDC guidance is 6 feet apart for more than, within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. And I've seen without a mask even being thrown in there. I think that 12 cases in the school, what do we have, 3,800 students in the, well, you take away the remote, so it's minimal, but I think that is, it's the CDC guidance that when we know, I mean, as a parent and as someone working in a building where there are days when I'm getting 2 of these letters from my own building and from the district my kids go in, I think that if things are done safely, there are not close contacts in a school. If you're 6 feet apart, if you're wearing a mask, it is safe, and I think that parents and families need to know that, and it's, I've had the same exact questions, like if I get an email from my school nurse that a student of mine is out for 14 days, who is it, what cohort this, I mean, it's the life that we all are in, but I do feel comfortable in saying that I think that if the protocols are followed appropriately, that it is safe and that close contacts. I mean, someone in this room could test positive tomorrow and we would not, none of us would be defined as a close contact per CDC guidance. We can agree or disagree with it, but that is what it is.
The added benefit, unbeknownst to us, when we came up with the cohorts of A and B on Monday, or A on Monday, Tuesday, and B on Thursday, Friday, all of our students that have not been in school for a number of days because of their cohort has been off. So when the student had tested positive, they weren't even in school the 5 days prior. So it's really worked out well. And I know where my kids are at, their cohort is Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. That doesn't lead to that type of social distance. They've been there. So unbeknownst to us, it was a benefit, and it's working out well for us, but that's an added safety benefit that we thought that has been shown to be pretty good.
I just had, so how are our teachers in this district notified?
So when a student is positive, I send out an email to the entire district, including staff.
And what does it say?
It says a student at Indian Head has tested positive, yada, yada, yada. All close contacts will be notified by the Board of Health. It's a generic letter from DESE.
So they're not, like, to your point, you may not know if someone in your class is tested.
The letter that he sends out is the same letter that I get from my district if I have a student. It's a form letter yeah.
I've worded it a little bit better to use Whitman-Hanson lingo a little bit, but it's the form letter that I get from Pembroke where my kids go. I got 3 of them yesterday across the district. So what I'm trying to do is, if I have 2 students, like last Monday, we had multiple students test positive over the long weekend, we sent out a letter, not Indian Head had 1 student to the district and Duval had 1 student, and those aren't the places, but I put it all on 1 letter. 2 students at this and 1 student at this. I'm trying to condense that a little bit. This weekend was a good weekend. Last weekend was not. So that's how we notify, and I'll take feedback as we go. But it's a form letter, and we're trying to make sure people know with protecting student rights and health rights. Any other questions about COVID? Anything on that?
There's actually an update on Channel 5 stating the Mass Department of Public Health said Wednesday that beginning this week, they will begin releasing the weekly COVID-19 health report that indicates the high-risk towns on Thursdays. Okay. The health department said people can expect changes to how it presents the data as it takes what it is said a more targeted approach with our guidance. According to the health department, beginning with Thursday's report, the Department of Public Health will identify a municipality's positive cases have significantly impacted by a clearly identified cluster in a long-term care facility, higher education institution, or a correctional facility. Okay. And that's basically what you were just discussing. It just came through.
Okay. And I'll keep the committee up to date as I get more guidance.
Mr. Boyce.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff, you mentioned Chief Grano. What's he involved in? Is he like on the calls with the Board of Health?
So Timmy is the emergency officer for Whitman.
Right, yeah, okay.
So he asked me when we were talking about the long weekend and the increase in cases, he said, do you think I should schedule a meeting with Board of Health? I said, absolutely, so I can connect with Alexis. Whitman has hired a part-time nurse to do all their contact tracing, and she's worked with Lisa. Hanson has not. There's been some talk about that with Mr. Stanbrook potentially of Hanson getting a part-time nurse. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. But on that conference call with Alexis, Timmy, their nurse, and Lisa the other day, Tim was like, you want to keep your kids in, right? I said, yeah. And he might be looking at other restrictions or the town pulling back once they go into red or making some suggestions there. As most of you know, in Whitman, most things aren't open in Whitman still as far as town hall. You can by appointment only, it's not a drop-in. And the town itself is discussing whether to open up different things. My priority is keeping kids in school and making sure their schedules aren't impacted by a shift in the community that isn't necessarily caused by us. Again, I'll keep you updated as I can. Hopefully those updates, when I get information, I shoot them out to you, just so that, as Mr. Small always said, I don't want to get caught at Stop and Shop with no information from the superintendent. So I'll try to give you information as I get it. Sometimes it's pretty bland because I can't give you specifics, and I know that puts folks in an awkward spot sometimes, but that's just the way it is right now.
I just have a. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Hillary.
I just have a follow-up on that shifting, like if you need to pivot to remote. I know that Wednesdays are PD days for teachers. Is there specific PD to prepare for if they have to go fully remote? I mean, I know that we like to say that it's going to be smooth and easy, but it might not be. Is there any focus on that, or are we kind of waiting, or?
George, do you want to talk a little bit about Simple K-12 or any of the PD that we've talked about with remote? Please.
Sure. So depending on the date, time, and what happens, we'll have to see what obviously our district calendar is like. But one of the things we've tried to do is to make sure that when we went in the summer, when we went into it, we did a lot of training on setting up your Google Classroom, making sure that everything was taken care of. What we're now talking about with the principals is that in your classrooms, make sure you're using the Chromebooks that are available so that you can start training the students on how to do breakout rooms, what do you have at home? Do you have headphones at home? Do you have a whiteboard at home? So that we are all ready to go in case. We also have for our staff Simple K-12. Simple K-12 is the professional development. It's called PD in your slippers, and it's a 24/7 piece of professional development that has everything that you need for blended learning, online learning. It has everything from the business office that can learn to the teacher themselves, Google Slides, all of that. So teachers can partake of that whenever it is that they want. Also, a lot of what's happening now on Wednesdays a lot of the time is that teachers are given time or they're given direction so that that teacher that knows what they're doing in that class or what they're doing very well in a, let's say, a Slides or a Google Meet, they're now providing each other with the professional development to be ready for it. But the state, we did not keep any of the 10 days from when the state allowed 10 days to open because that wasn't what was offered necessarily by the commissioner. It was 10 days to prepare, and then as we get ready and we're seeing these metrics, it's been very good that actually that we have these metrics, we're starting to prepare so that we can be ready to go out if we have to, or pivot if we have to.
Thanks, George. Any other questions on COVID at all? Thanks. Just an update. I reached out. The committee had talked about MASC quite a bit. So I gave Glenn Kuchar a call last week to see what he could offer us as a committee to give us any type of training, any type of answer questions of the committee. So Glenn's offered to come down next Wednesday. It's going to be a workshop, Wednesday the 28th. It's not a scheduled school committee meeting, so it's not an open meeting. It's a workshop. 6:30 to 8 or 8:30. Again, it's an open, he's going to ask questions. He's going to direct this committee to what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and answer and provide feedback for us as a unit, provide training. We've talked about goals. We've talked about a few different things. I know Glenn a little bit, and he's a pretty good guy. If you haven't met Glenn, he's the executive director of MASC. He speaks freely. He's dealt with a lot of school committees over time, and I think he's the appropriate person to guide us along the way. So Glenn will be here next week. If you can make it, that's great. I hope all 10 folks can be there. I haven't talked to Glenn what it's going to be structured like. I don't know if I'm going to be there, if George is going to be there or not. I don't know if it's a school committee thing. So I'm going to work that out with Glenn, and we'll send you out an invite. But again, it's not a public meeting. It's a workshop. No decisions will be made. There won't be discussions to make decisions on anything. It'll be a workshop, or really a professional development for the school committee. So that'll be next Wednesday.
I just missed the time.
6:30 on Wednesday.
Thank you.
A week from today.
A week from today.
At 6:30 here.
Here.
If you would give your goals, Jeff, we're approaching the time and the attorney has arrived for executive session.
Yes.
So if you can run through, do you expect that to be a lengthy discussion?
No, I think we can go through these. I know folks have seen these. I just want to announce them publicly, where we're at. I put a new copy on your desk. I did have a typo on one on the thing that Michelle sent you. I actually had two, so I changed it very briefly. It's not about the goals itself. So goals for this year, and off the top, not written down. I just want to be able to get through this year successfully, because I don't know what next year looks like. We're going to talk budget a little bit, and we bantered around. It's hard to project a budget when we don't know how we're going to open school in September. Will we be in a full in-person mode? Will we have to offer remote from now on? I'm not sure. So as we go forward, those are going to be talking points for us on what we want our district to look like in September of 2021. So I'm looking at my goals. You evaluate me on four performance standards: instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, professional culture. All of these things and the indicators and all of the standards are on the DESE website. I didn't want to give you paper just to look at. If you want to look at the superintendent's evaluation, it's on the DESE website. There is a pilot of rubric there that I still don't know if DESE has approved the pilot rubric that I was on a committee in the summer of 19 to put this pilot rubric out there. I've heard Zippo from DESE if that rubric was approved or not. Goal areas and goal setting: professional practice goal, student learning goal, district improvement goal. I appreciate your feedback at the last meeting. You'll see in these goals that I incorporated some of your thoughts from the district perspective in my goals. The goals are based upon the self-evaluation that I presented, my end-of-year evaluations from you folks, and my leadership team. So goal number 1, I actually have 5 for you: to effectively collaborate with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or MSBA, through the feasibility study to secure funding for a replacement, renovation, or modernization of the Whitman Middle School. That's under Standard 2, Management and Operations, and Standard 3, Family and Community Engagement. And I'll take questions at the end if you don't mind. Next is to implement interim assessments in grades K to 8 3 times during the school year in both English Language Arts and Mathematics, utilizing iReady and the interreading programs for grades K to 5 and the IXL diagnostic program in grades 6 through 8. This is to understand where our students are at and to help remediate identified weaknesses or extend core knowledge while they are learning grade level curriculum. Instructional leadership. You probably saw a little bit of information from Gary on the slide. I want to show you how we're using what we've invested in, our curriculum that we've invested in, and the diagnostic tools. Using a transformative social emotional learning approach in conjunction with our District Excel team, the Rennie Center, and Transforming Education, we will offer professional development in the areas of identity, belonging, and agency in order to build strong, respectful, and lasting relationships for our students and staff. This goal is to critically examine root causes of inequity, discover examples where it exists, and to ensure that we promote justice for all individuals. That came right from you folks a couple weeks ago, that you're looking for a goal in equity, and we're going to dive down deep using the tools that we have for that. Another goal is to close the equity gaps currently in place for our EL students, our English learners. They're not English language learners anymore, they're ELs. Our population, according to the DESE Student Learning Experience Reports. Specific areas of concern are makeup of our EL cohorts as to staffing, years of teaching, teacher evaluation, and absenteeism. We get a student learning report or experience report on every student, and we have been flagged by DESE in that EL cohort. So we need to look at that to make sure that there's equity for those students, and we come out of that little flag. And then finally, implement through an evaluation of our technology infrastructure a sustainable plan for WHRSD to become a one-to-one Chromebook school district, which will also allow the district to fully transition to Google Essentials and its educational benefit. Management and operations, professional culture, and instructional leadership. I think these goals, George and I talked about these, we kind of put these together ourselves. I call us a team up there. These are sustainable, these are measurable, and these are goals that we can do if we're in remote learning or if we're in in-person learning. Last year, when we went to our full remote, some of the things that I had lined out in October of last year were not sustainable or not measurable because we weren't present. These are all, we will be able to do all of these, and I should be able to present to you evidence of that throughout the course of the year, whether or not we're in person or we're fully remote. Does anyone have any questions or comment?
I entertain a motion to accept the goals as read for the 2020-2021 year by the superintendent.
So moved by Dan.
Discussion. Who seconded it?
Either one.
I'll second.
Dan.
Dawn, do you have a
I
question?
just a question, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for putting these together. Just in regards to the professional practice goal, are these designated as the professional practice, student learning, and then which ones are?
I kind of didn't do that because I had a hard time, because all of these could be professional practice.
Okay.
Some of these could be student learning, and some of these are district. So I kind of put it together that way. Specifically, I didn't want to align it. We had it up on the board, and this was going to be professional practice. But then when we talked about the equity goal from the district perspective, that was really my professional practice goal, but that came from the committee as a district improvement goal. So I just put those in as goals, and the committee can assign that and say, hey, look, this really is your professional practice, this is district. So I kept that vague on purpose.
Okay.
Anyone else? Chris?
So I think, and I know the goals are hard because of the way that DESI kind of builds the rubric, right? But do you feel that the goals would be representative for us to be able to evaluate your performance at the end of the year? Because when I look at some of the goals, they are very specific and tactical. So I know we need to make them measurable, but at the same time, I feel like we're really drilling down to very specific items. And I pause a little bit just to make sure that you feel comfortable when we sit here a year from now and we're looking at your overall cumulative performance in terms of that evaluation, that these goals are representative of us.
I think so. I think for me, more specific right now is better. But I'm also going to provide throughout the course of the year other items. Like today, when we talked about our schools, I'm hoping you see that as an indicator of instructional leadership. When we talk about facilities, that should be under management and operations. So I'm going to have Michelle highlight in the minutes areas of those indicators, so that will help you in June. And I'm going to ask you specifically this year. I'd like an evaluation before the summer. I'd like one in June, and that just will help me over the summer so I can formulate a plan of approach to September. So in May, I'm going to formulate this. We'll have a formative in January or February, and then I will present to you evidence in May, so that by the end of June, I can walk away for the summer and say, this is where we want to be, and my team can then start to formulate where we want to be. It has been challenging to be evaluated in September and then come up with goals 3 weeks later. I'll just say that out loud. It's through nobody's fault, but I'm going to ask this committee to be focused in on that, because it helps me, since I'm the only person in both towns that's evaluated publicly. I'd like to be able to have that, in a timely manner, so I can then move on that evaluation and show the community that where we're going to stand in September. So that would be beneficial. So I'm asking you for that homework. I will provide you the resources for that. Michelle and I will structure some things a little differently, and we will flag areas of those indicators so that I can lead you to that, so that you'll have evidence of that, and it won't be saying, geez, Jeff said that in November, but I don't see it anywhere. So I'm going to help you along the way.
Anyone else? Okay, this is going to need to be a roll call vote because Mr. Small is participating remotely. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
What are we doing?
Mr. Scriven?
Just voting on my goals.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Sorry, Dan. Ms. Sniffen?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, yes. Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Unanimous. Mr. Small?
Yes.
Did I wake you up?
Now I'm awake.
No. Thanks, Fred. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Fred. Okay. Being the hour, as I told you, we were going to run into this, I'm going to jump to, excuse me, executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and I declare it has. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
After we go into executive session, we will be coming out and hopefully finishing the meeting and maybe taking other votes. I don't expect this executive session to be very long, but executive sessions sometimes do get long. So I have a motion and a second. Michelle, do you have both? Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Bob Hayes, yes. Ms. Sniffen?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
We are in executive session. Mr. Small?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're on live again. Hi, folks. Welcome back.
Okay. Is there anything that needs to be done? Because I would be tempted to just move right on and adjourn this meeting. And is there any of this prioritized that has to be done this evening? It's almost 10 o'clock.
No, I was able to get through the superintendent's piece of it. Everything is subcommittee reports. We can do a negotiation subcommittee at the next meeting. The union is drafting their letter with their intent to negotiate, so we can formulate that at the next meeting. There is nothing here that's pressing that needs to have a decision made, at least in my opinion, from the school piece of it. From the committee piece might be different, but from the school piece of it, there's no decisions that can impact us for the next month.
Dawn, then David. Dawn?
MASC resolution, because this is coming in a couple weeks on a Saturday, on November 7th.
7th of November.
Yeah. So are we meeting again before November 7th?
We will be meeting to do,
Our next scheduled meeting is for Michelle, November 18th, correct?
yes, the next meeting that we're meeting is a week from tonight on professional development for the school committee with
It's a work group, it's not
Glenn
a
Kuchar.
meeting.
Yeah, it's a
We will
work,
not be voting anything at that meeting.
right. Is it brief, Dawn?
Well, I'm the delegate to attend.
In other words, this is the second reading of MASC, is that what you're saying?
No, this
This
is
is the resolutions.
new business new business C, report of MASC resolutions.
Okay.
So in your packet, there is a list of MASC resolutions that I think Dawn is looking for either the committee to endorse those resolutions as a whole, or pick the resolution she has to vote for as our Whitman-Hanson Regional School
Yes.
Committee delegate to the MASS conference, and she's the delegate. So you had an opportunity to read through these resolutions, and the committee can approve those resolutions, not approve those resolutions. It's up to the committee to give her charge.
Okay.
Per se. So, and you're right, that is, or the committee can vote to not do anything with those resolutions.
Mr. Cullity?
I only have a problem with number 4. Lowering the voting
What
age.
page?
So, Bob.
Second page, or page 27 on the,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Howard has a question.
So before we dive right into this, I think let's pause. So what is it that we're trying to do, right? So are we going to try and get a consensus on yes, no, abstain on all of these? Having read these, I can tell you right now that this is not going to be a quick conversation, because I can tell you right now we're going to hit some of these topics and we're going to spend about God knows how long on them, and perhaps we should. So I'm just, we may want to have a meeting and just, I don't know if we're going to set the expectation of, let's just straw poll, yes, yes, no, 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 abstain, whatever, on each of these.
Oh, it's going to take way longer than that if we're going to go through them one at a time. We're going to be here for an hour or two.
We should meet next.
If we do a majority rules?
Yeah, why can't you just vote it as majority rules, go right through them?
Well,
Why couldn't you just do what he's saying, a straw vote, go right around a hand vote on each individual one real quick? We all read this already.
Because we have Fred
Michelle.
remote.
Michelle has a question.
Go ahead.
The committee doesn't necessarily have to vote the resolutions before MASC's annual conference. Dawn can abstain and then bring back information from the conference, and then we can vote on the resolutions.
So I think, yeah, I think
So
that,
the vote is to vote, if the committee wants to endorse the resolutions, that's your vote. What I think, Dawn, what you do at the end
You got a
of the meeting
calendar.
is, what do you do exactly? Do you vote that Whitman-Hanson is supporting those, or?
So
I haven't been a delegate before,
I'll take that.
so looking for some guidance.
so I think the problem is that when you get into that room, you're voting. So this was what Don and I talked about last year. So I'm sitting in the room and, some of these issues, so am I voting what I think? I don't think that's right. I should be voting what the committee thinks, right? Because I'm the representative for the committee. So it's not really fair to send someone and be like, well, what do you think, Don? Well, I don't know. Like, what?
I agree. It's
Right, so people are speaking at those committee delegations saying, well, we talked about this as a committee and this is what we thought. So we either need to come up with we just go around and yes, 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 no, and majority rules, or we're gonna need to spend some time, which I'm fine doing, but I would caution.
We have another meeting on November 4th.
We're gonna spend some time on them. Yeah, that might be.
I think if we're gonna, I think another meeting makes more sense. I understand a straw poll in the essence of
I'm good with another meeting
timeliness.
too. I'm not suggesting otherwise.
no,
I'm just
right,
saying,
right. I'm
this
not
is not
saying-
gonna be quick.
Right, and I think if we want to send Dawn as our delegate with correct information, representative of all of us, we need to have a conversation about these things.
I totally agree. And it's nothing we can just jump into. David had his hand up first, Dan, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about, I'm sorry.
Over. Oh, wait, no, I remembered. Now I remember.
Okay, all right.
All right, I was just wondering, Chair, if, obviously, time is we're on a time crunch right now, but could we add the DESI district review to our next meeting and discuss that too?
To do what?
The DESI district review report from January 2014, it was on the agenda for tonight.
So anything that's on this agenda, we'll put on our next meeting.
Okay.
That's fine. And if we're going to schedule one for November 4th, we can schedule one for November 4th.
Yeah,
Just
and
know
we'll
that-
finish everything we didn't do
Just know
tonight.
that next
Okay,
Wednesday is not a voting meeting, it's PD, and we're not going to have a meeting that day.
Mr. Boyce?
Please add, thank you, please add Pilgrim Area Collaborative under this
We need a report from
subcommittee
you.
report.
Okay. Michelle?
Thank you.
Dan, I'm sorry.
The way the delegate works, usually MSAC has a division meeting prior, and you attend that, and they go over this. You bring it back to your school committee, you go over it with your school committee, and you say like, it's a yes for everything, or if you object to something. As a committee, there's, what, 7 of them this year? Which is kind of, how many?
10.
And that's what she has to go in there with, is our committee says yes on 1, no on 2, yes on whatever it happens to be. That's what happens when you're a delegate. You go into the room, you're in there with like, well, it won't be a room anymore.
I know.
But usually if it was, you'd be in a room like this size with everybody that's a delegate from every school system, and they read these, and it's just like a town meeting. It's just like yes or no.
Exactly.
That's how it works.
Okay. David, you had your
I'm good,
question
yeah, no
answered. I entertain a motion to we're going to have a November 4th meeting.
Yeah.
Everybody cool?
Yes.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's make it.
So moved.
Motion. Second it.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Boyce? Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Scriven? Ms.
Yes.
Stiffen?
Yes.
Bob Hayes, yes. John Byers?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Please read your, Mr.